Video PowerPoint número 7. Las consonantes del español, parte 1. All right, this is where things get a little tricky, a little bit technical. So with some patience and a lot of practice, we're going to get this down. Okay, fonemas y alófonos. Up until now, we've only spoken of fonemas. Now, we're going to begin to break things down into alófonos. ¿Cuál es la diferencia entre un fonema y un alófono? I will definitely give you all this information in Spanish, but in my experience, definitions are great, but it might not really sink in until you practice it quite a bit. So just do what you can with understanding what I'm about to say, and then know that we will practice quite a bit. ¿Cuál es la diferencia entre un fonema y un alófono? Un fonema. Un fonema representa una familia de sonidos y es una representación de pronunciación en el abstracto. En el abstracto. Cuando tenemos fonemas diferentes, tenemos sentidos diferentes. Fonemas diferentes producen un cambio en el sentido. Por ejemplo, in English, we've got the words bit and pit. The vowel sound and the T are the same in both. It's the first sound that's different. So if I make a B sound, I'm saying the word bit. If I say a P sound, I'm saying the word pit. Two completely different words, different sounds, different words. So B and P in this case are phonemes. Now this is an interesting case. For most of you, you will pronounce these two words differently in English, pin and pen. So the I sound in pin and the E sound in pen, you hear the different sounds, and one word means one thing and one word means another thing. In the South, most people pronounce these two as pin, both of them. So you would put a pin on your jacket, but you'd also write with a pin. So if you remember back to when we talked about minimal pairs, for most of us English speakers in the United States, this forms a minimal pair with the vowels being different, e. But in some areas of the South, they're both I, pin and pin. But for us, we have I and E as a phoneme, meaning if you change that phoneme, you're going to change the meaning of the word. En español, lo mismo. Basta, pasta. Basta tiene el sonido sonoro B y pasta tiene el sonido sordo P. B, P. Sonidos diferentes, sí, pero ¿son fonemas diferentes? Sí, porque basta y pasta son palabras diferentes, tienen sentidos diferentes. Lo mismo con queso, caso. La única diferencia aquí, la primera vocal E en queso y A en caso. Aquí E, A son fonemas diferentes porque cambian el sentido de la palabra. Ok, un repaso de las cosas más importantes de fonemas. Número 1, fonemas son una representación de pronunciación en el abstracto. En realidad, nunca pronunciamos en voz alta fonemas. Fonemas son representaciones, no son pronunciaciones físicas. La segunda cosa importante es que los fonemas representan una familia de sonidos. Pero, ¿qué significa eso? So let's give an example. La familia de D. La familia de D. So you might ask yourself, yeah, that's D. What other kinds of a D could there be? What you learned is it's dental, it is an occlusive or a stop, and it is voiced. El fonema D es dental, oclusivo, y sonoro. So it works like a D, and you're thinking, of course it works like a D, but domingo and cada. Both of those Ds represent the family of D. If I changed it to another letter, for example, in cada, if I put a J in there, it would be caja. So d and h in cada y caja represent different phonemes because that would make a different word. But these both function like Ds, but they're not pronounced exactly the same. So try this word after me, domingo. Is it still a stop for you? You put your tongue in the back of your teeth. Domingo. Yes, it should still be everything you thought it was. So dental, oclusivo, sonoro. But in the next word, the correct pronunciation is not an occlusive. It's not cada, cada. It's actually putting your tongue between your teeth and try, I'll give you an English word for an example. Say the word the, like in English, just the, and feel that first sound, ugh. Tongue between the teeth, but your vocal cords are vibrating. That's technically the sound you're making here, cada. So domingo and cada, they're not exactly the same sound. And we'll get to that in a moment. But we can all agree that these two instances of d both work like a d. It's not any other consonant. It's just a d, so it works like a d. And this is the example I just mentioned. If I had changed the D in cada to a J in caja, now we would have fonemas diferentes. All right, now los alófonos. Un poco más complicado. Si fonemas son familias de sonidos, los alófonos representan un miembro de la familia, un miembro de la familia. Alófonos son una descripción exacta de la pronunciación en un contexto. Entonces, fonemas son más abstractos. Los alófonos son representaciones de pronunciación como ocurre en un contexto en particular. Alófonos diferentes no producen cambio en el sentido. Recuerda, fonemas, sí, fonemas diferentes, sentidos diferentes. Alófonos diferentes no producen cambio en el sentido. Let's get an example from English. So if you look at the words to, stew, and butter, well, they all are letter T's. One happens to have two T's, but that doesn't really affect the sound. So they all belong to the family of t, or the family of T, if you will. So that's the overall family. But do you pronounce them all exactly the same? What I'd like you to do is put your fingers in front of your mouth, really close, about a half inch, an inch away from your lips, and pronounce the first word a couple of times. Just in English. Two, two, two. You should feel a little puff of air. Now, keep your fingers right where they were and pronounce the next word a few times. Stew, stew, stew. You should hear and feel a lot less air there. So the first one is aspirated. There's some extra air behind it. In the next one, stew, the air goes away. Now, could I switch up those two sounds? Oh, I could, but it wouldn't be natural. So for example, in the word stew, what if I wanted to make it like aspirated, this extra air that comes out of my mouth, like in two? I could try, I could say stew, stew, but you can see how unnatural that sounds. So yes, the T in two, the T in stew, they both belong to the family of T, so they're both represented by the phoneme T, but they're not pronounced exactly the same. We'll get to the detail of how you notate that in a moment. But butter, say that word, butter. Now, unless you're from Britain or have learned British English, you're not saying a T at all. Any kind of a T, aspirated or not. You're saying a D. Try it again, butter, butter. So all of these get pronounced slightly differently, but they still work like T's. So they all belong to la familia de T. Notice that we are using slashes just like you've seen before. So when we talked about breath groups and we talked about phonemes, we were using slashes. We're still going to use slashes to represent phonemes. Now, let's get to the details about how those sounds differ. So as I said, they all function like a T, but they're not pronounced in the same way. That aspirated T, the T with a little extra breath that I told you about, in English phonetics is represented with a T and then like an accent mark after it. So that's the t, t with some air after it, tu. The next one is just your regular t sound, like in stew. And as we said, in the word butter, that's not even remotely a T sound unless you're from Britain. It's a D. So now what you're looking at is brackets. From now on, when we talk about allophones, and again, these are members of the family of the phonemes, we're going to be using brackets. So what you see here is 3 different pronunciations. T with a little air, aspirated, t, just the regular one, and d. So you can hear the difference, obviously. You can pronounce the difference. But do those 3 different pronunciations change anything about these words functioning, these letters functioning like a T? It doesn't change anything. So they're all the phoneme T, the family T, but they're individual members that in certain circumstances get pronounced slightly differently. So the takeaway from this, un fonema diferente causa un cambio de sentido. Un alófono diferente no cambia el sentido. Un ejemplo del español, la familia de Y. La familia de Y. Normalmente usamos el sonido Y para Y como en yo o EY como en llamo. El mismo sonido, Y, Y. Entonces repita, yo llamo. Yo llamo. El mismo sonido. El fonema es Y. Pero este fonema no se pronuncia en la misma manera en todas partes del mundo hispano. Yo llamo. That first column with just the Y. Now notice that up above, your phonemes, this is very important, your phonemes are written with slashes. Your allophones are written with brackets. So if you go down that first column with the yo and the llamo, we're going to stay that same sound. So just try this after me. Y, y, yo llamo. The next one is a J with a hat, and it's pronounced J, like in the word judge. That word actually has one to begin with and one to end with. So try that. J, j, judge, j. So some people in the Spanish-speaking world would say yo and llamo. Yo and llamo. The next 2 you can see in Argentina and other areas of the south of South America. The first one, S with a hat, is the sound sh, like in trying to get someone to be quiet. Shh. So some people would pronounce this as sho and shamo. Sho and shamo. And the last one, the Z with the hat, is similar to the S with the hat, but it's voiced. So this is a sound zh, and we see it in English like in the middle of the word pleasure or treasure. So try that, zh. So some people, especially in Argentina, might say yo me llamo. So if I just pronounce these sounds individually, y, j, sh, zh, yes, you can hear the difference. So if I say yo me llamo, it's different from yo me llamo, and yo me llamo, and yo me llamo. They're very noticeably different. But those different allophones that go with particular dialects, they don't change the meaning of the word at all. So someone from Argentina would perfectly understand someone from Mexico who said yo me llamo, and in reverse, a person from Mexico listening to an Argentinian saying yo me llamo, they would say, wow, what a different dialect, but I know what you're saying, yo me llamo. So the y and the j, I want to concentrate just for a minute on the y and the j. What we talked about, 2 different allophones don't change the meaning, but that's language specific. So in Spanish, the y and the j don't change any meaning, so there's no difference between yo and yo, and llamo and llamo. But in English, think about this. Would you rather send your kid to Yale y, or jail, j. So in English, those are different phonemes because Yale and jail are definitely two different things. So when you ask yourself, is this an allophone or a phoneme? You need to speak of it within the context of a particular language. So the sounds y and j in English are different phonemes, and they do change the meaning of the word. But in Spanish, the same sounds, y and j, are simply different ways to pronounce the same phoneme y, and the meaning is not changed. Ok, entonces, como repaso, los alófonos representan la pronunciación exacta con las modificaciones que resultan de su posición en una palabra o una sílaba. Un ejemplo, en la palabra nada, tenemos el fonema d, nada. Pero, ¿qué tipo de d es? Normalmente pensamos en d como dental, oclusivo y fricativo. Pero en esta palabra no es dental, oclusivo, sonoro. If it were, you'd be saying nada. And many English speakers do sound just like that when they say nada. Try that. Nada, nada, nada. It sounds very, very gringo. What you want is a different member de la familia de d. Y aquí tenemos dos símbolos, pero representan el mismo sonido. I want to say this very clearly. This D shape, kind of like a D with a curved top and then a line through it, that is the th sound, like in the word the in English. Try that. The. You can type it as a regular D, but then do the strike through function. So these are simply two different ways to write this symbol, but the symbol means the same sound. They both go with the. So they're not two separate entries on a chart, the International Phonetic Chart. I'm just saying they're two different. You can draw it by hand, the first one, if you don't want to do the whole paste, cut and paste, search symbol, all that kind of thing. Or you can do it D with a line through it. Either one is fine. But this is a little different. No es un sonido dental oclusivo y sonoro. Aquí es un sonido dental fricativo y sonoro. Y recuerda, fricativo significa que podemos continuar el sonido, como podemos continuar este sonido. Entonces la pronunciación correcta no es nada, es nada. Just an exaggeration to make sure you're getting the point. Say the word the. Now pretend the has an A-H at the end of it. So the. Try that. The. Now say na, the. Na, the. A little bit of an exaggeration, but that's basically what we need to be doing in Spanish. So now back off the exaggeration a little bit and you get the natural pronunciation in Spanish of nada, nada, nada. Aquí, como repaso, es dental el punto. El punto no cambia. Sonorización es sonoro, no cambia. La única diferencia es fricativo ahora, es el modo en vez de oclusivo. ¿Por qué tenemos the, el fricativo, en la palabra nada? Es porque hay una regla que cuando tenemos el fonema d entre dos vocales, ahora no es oclusivo, se convierte en un fricativo en vez de un oclusivo. Simplemente es una regla. Vamos a hablar más de esta regla en unos minutos. Pero en otras posiciones puede ser el oclusivo, the. Now I'm still using brackets here. So brackets here, I'm not saying the phoneme d, I'm saying the specific member of that family, of the d phoneme family, that stays dental, occlusive, and voiced. So, dolor. Put your tongue in the back of your teeth and repeat dolor, dolor. Now, say the English word though, like even though, though. and hold out that sound. Can you start the word the Lord with that sound? Well, you could, the Lord, but that sounds ridiculous. That's not what happens at the beginning of a breath group. When you have a D at the beginning of a breath group, like we do here, which is also the beginning of a word, it's not fricative, it stays occlusive. So the en nada es un alófono diferente que el alófono d en dolor, pero son miembros de la misma familia del fonema de. Now, I want to explain why I tortured you so much learning how to divide words in syllables in Spanish. This is the reason. Muchas modificaciones pueden ocurrir en posición final de sílaba. So when a sound comes at the end of a syllable, which is not necessarily the end of a word, but the end of the syllable, it's very vulnerable. Things can happen to it. What kinds of things? Well, it has to do with the sounds around it and how they affect the sound you're talking about. Hay un término para memorizar, se llama asimilación. La definición de asimilación: cuando un sonido cambia para ser más similar a otro sonido inmediatamente antes o después. Dos ejemplos. Aquí tenemos la palabra desde. While we're still getting used to the differences between slashes and brackets, I'm going to explain this in English. So what you'd been doing for me before, up till the midterm, was using slashes, and the symbols in between these slashes are phonemes. If I changed one of them, it would change the meaning of a word. But in the brackets, we're representing the actual physical pronunciation as it is supposed to be in Spanish. And what we will learn is if you have a voiced consonant before the phoneme S, if you have the voiced consonant, if you have a voiced consonant after the phoneme S, then that phoneme S becomes the allophone Z. Why on earth would it do that? Just as a reminder, put your fingers on your throat for a moment and make the S sound like a snake, and tell me if you feel any vibration. You shouldn't. Now do the same thing with the Z sound, kind of like a B, with your fingers at your throat. Z. Now you should feel vibration. So what's happened is the voicing of the D, it is a voiced sound, it retroactively affects the sound that comes before it. In this case, the S sound turning to the Z. So yes, you can say it with an S, desde, but that is not the correct pronunciation of this word in Spanish. Really what you need to be saying is desde. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. I'll do that again, exaggerated, desde, instead of desde. So you see this D being voiced, retroactively affecting the sound before it, which was the phoneme S, but now is the allophone Z. Otro ejemplo. Un día. Between the slashes, you have your phonemes, and between your brackets, you have what actually should happen when you pronounce that out loud. So we're going to deal with the D again. We're going to take this phoneme D, which also is a D in the allophones. But when you start to make a D sound in Spanish, I want you to put your tongue on the back of your teeth, back of your top teeth, and say the, dia. In English, we don't do that. In English, with a t and a d, just as a reminder, we are using those as alveolar sounds in English. So if you put your tongue on the little ridge that comes behind your teeth, and you say in English like Tom or day, try those again, Tom, day, you can feel your tongue touch that alveolar ridge. We don't want that in Spanish. So instead of saying an alveolar dia, which sounds very gringo, dia, you're going to put your tongue on the back of your teeth and say dia. Okay. Later on in this presentation, you're going to learn that a whole bunch of things can happen to the phoneme N, like in the end of the word un, or the end of this syllable un, and it is also affected by the sound that comes after it. So here, we're dealing with a D again. Since this D is dental, then it turns the preceding N sound into this symbol, which is N with a little tail underneath it. We're going to talk about all the kinds of things that can happen to the phoneme N later on in the presentation. But these are two examples of asimilación. Cuando un sonido cambia para ser más similar a otro sonido inmediatamente antes o después. Let's start with the easy stuff of the oclusivos, p, t, k. There's not a whole lot to say about this. As you knew before, the p es bilabial oclusivo sordo, t, dental oclusivo sordo, y k, velar oclusivo sordo. P, t, k, todos oclusivos, todos sordos. La diferencia, el punto. P, bilabial, t, dental, y k, velar. The good news is they don't ever change depending on where they come in the word. So let's just talk about some other things. Dificultades para los anglohablantes. The number one thing for you English speakers that you want to avoid is having aspiración, which is like a little extra puff of air after you make these sounds. So just making the p, t, k, I want you to exaggerate with me a little bit, and you're going to put a little bit of extra breath after them. So, p, you hear the breath after that, try that. P, t, k. If we were to use that sound, we would be saying things like pasa and tasa and casa. Maybe not quite that exaggerated, but you get the point. We want to eliminate that air altogether when we are speaking Spanish. So if you put your fingers up in front of your lips, let's say about an inch or two away from your lips, make the sound p like you think you should. Just say p, p, and now t, t, and k, k. You should feel a little bit of breath. Now, keeping your fingers there, I want you to say these three words in Spanish, but do everything you can to avoid aspirating those. In other words, eliminate that extra breathy sound. So after me, pasa, pasa, taza, taza, casa, casa. All right. Sometimes we can do a little bit of overkill on this, and you don't need to worry about this rule, but in case you're curious, sometimes when an English speaker is trying really hard to avoid that aspiration, they accidentally make that sound voiced. So instead of saying pasa, you get like a b, basa, and we don't want that. So I want you to pronounce the p, t, k, just like you think you should. In this case, it doesn't matter where it happens in a syllable, but just make sure you don't have that extra air after the sound. So one more time, fingers up, avoiding the air. Pasa, taza, casa. Okay, ortografía. Simple. If you want a p sound, it's always going to be the letter P. Lo mismo con t, letra del alfabeto, T o T en español. Y k. Con k hay tres posibilidades. Q, U. Pero esto ocurre solamente en palabras cuando el sonido ocurre antes de E o I, como en queso, quiso. U aquí no tiene ningún sonido, simplemente es una letra que usamos con Q para crear el sonido correcto. Entonces Q, U son las letras del alfabeto que usamos para el sonido K cuando el sonido ocurre antes de E, I. K. K. La letra K en el alfabeto español, lo siento, it doesn't exist. No es parte natural del alfabeto del español. Pero hay unas palabras extranjeras, y extranjeras son palabras que tomamos de otras lenguas. Por ejemplo, kiosco o kilómetro o Nueva York. Y en muchos casos es simplemente una repetición de la ortografía del inglés. Y en todos otros casos usamos la letra C para el sonido K, como en cama o cámara. Para resumir, P, letra P, T, letra T. K, tres posibilidades. QU antes de E o I. K en algunas palabras extranjeras, y no hay muchas. Y C en todos otros casos. Un poco de práctica. Simplemente vamos a pronunciar estas palabras, pero necesitamos evitar la aspiración. So as the instructions tell you, put your hand in front of your mouth again, your fingers about 1 or 2 inches away. And we're going to read these down as columns. You repeat them after me. But really pay attention to what happens after those initial sounds. Some have K, some have P, some have T. But make sure you're not feeling any air. So let's try this. Fingers up after me. Cama. Tomar. Pato. Codo. Tan. Now, to be completely honest, and I want to do that throughout this term, I felt a little bit of extra air on the second to last word, the codo. So for my sake, let's do that one again. So after me, codo. Codo. All right, let's do the next column. Same thing. Poco. Pista. Teja. Paz. Pasar. And the next column, after me, pelar, calle, cola, ti, quema, and the last column, columna final, tacos, por, casa, tocar, queso. Now, over the years, I've had English-speaking students tell me that one sound might cause a little bit more problem for them than other sounds, but some people say that it's the P that gives them the most issue of getting that extra air you don't want. Some people say it's the T, and other people say it's the K. So I don't know what it is for you individually, but doing this exercise, you can probably tell if you have a tendency to over-aspirate one of these sounds, or if it's just something that happens every once in a while and you just want to be careful with it. So P, T, K. Y vamos a practicar un poco más la misma cosa. Queremos evitar la aspiración. Entonces no queremos P, T, K, sino P, T, K. Ok. Estas frases, por favor, repitan. Tomarlo es necesario. Estamos concentrándonos en el primer sonido T y no queremos aspiración, no queremos aire. Otra vez. Tomarlo es necesario. Y número 2. Me canso mucho. Y 3. Pásame la sal. 4. Quiero té helado, por favor. Tenemos K en quiero, T en té y P en por. Otra vez, por favor, repitan. Quiero té helado, por favor. Y número 5. ¿Cómo se dice en español? Y 6. Pégale fuerte, hombre. Y 7. Tan rico es el presidente. Just as an aside, I made this presentation more than 2 years ago. Anyway, let's do that one again. Tan rico es el presidente. 8. Coca-Cola, por favor. Y 9. ¿Qué quieres, Carlos? Y finalmente, número 10. Tienes que ir a Texas mañana. Tienes que ir a Texas mañana. Okay, so we started with the easy stuff. All you have to do with put to k is make sure you don't have any extra air.